Maina pushed through the glass doors of the subway station and felt the cool underground air hit her face. Her black heels clicked against the concrete floor as she walked toward the platform. It was another long day at the office, and her feet hurt from standing in meetings all afternoon. She checked her phone. 6:47 p.m. The evening rush hour was in full swing. The platform was crowded with people waiting for the next train. Office workers in dark suits stood next to college students with heavy backpacks. Elderly people sat on the few available benches while mothers held on to their young children. Everyone looked tired and ready to go home. When the subway train arrived, its doors opened with a soft hiss. People immediately started pushing forward to get inside. Maina waited her turn and stepped into the car. It was packed just like every evening. She grabbed onto a metal pole near the door and looked around for an empty seat. There were no seats available. People filled every bench and stood in the aisles between them. Maina settled in for another standing ride home. She pulled out her phone to check her messages when something caught her eye. Near the middle of the car, a very tall figure stood out among the other passengers. At first, Maina thought it was just a very large man, but as she looked closer, she realized something was different. Very different. The being was at least 7 feet tall with broad shoulders that seemed too wide for a normal person. His skin had an unusual color, not quite brown, not quite green, but something in between. As Maina watched, she noticed the skin seemed to have a pattern on it, like scales on a fish, but much more subtle. His face was the most striking part. It was longer than a human face, with sharp cheekbones and a jaw that came to a point. His eyes were larger than normal and had a golden color that seemed to glow in the subway car's fluorescent lights. When he moved his head, Maina could see that his neck was longer than it should be. The being wore what looked like expensive clothes, but they were torn in several places. His dark jacket had rips along the sleeves, and there were stains on his shirt that looked like they might be blood. He held his left arm close to his body, and Maina could see him wince when the train moved and made him shift his weight. Other passengers had noticed the strange figure too. Most people tried not to stare, but Maina could see them looking out of the corners of their eyes. Some moved away from him when they could. A few took pictures with their phones when they thought he wasn't looking. The being seemed to sense the attention. He kept his head down and tried to make himself smaller, which was impossible given his size. Every time the train stopped or started, he had to grab onto the metal poles to keep from falling. Each movement made him grimace in pain. Maina watched as an elderly woman got up from her seat near the being. Instead of offering it to him, she quickly walked to the other end of the car. A businessman who had been standing nearby saw the empty seat and immediately sat down. Even though he was much younger and healthier than the injured being, the train swayed as it went around a curve, and the tall figure lost his balance for a moment. He reached out to steady himself but missed the pole. Maina saw him struggle to stay upright, clearly in pain from whatever injury he was hiding. That was when Maina made her decision. She had been raised by her grandmother, who always told her to be kind to people who needed help. It didn't matter if they looked different or came from somewhere else. If someone needed help, you helped them. It was that simple. Maina walked through the crowded car toward her own seat. She had managed to find 3 stops earlier when an older man got off the train. It wasn't the most comfortable seat, but it was better than standing for the rest of the ride home. She tapped the tall being gently on the arm. He looked down at her with those strange golden eyes. Up close, she could see that his pupils were shaped differently too, more like a cat's eyes than a human's. "Excuse me," Maina said in her basic English, hoping he might understand. "You can sit here." She pointed to her seat. The being stared at her for a moment, clearly surprised. He looked around the car as if checking to see if this was some kind of joke or trick. "You are hurt," Maina continued, still speaking slowly and clearly. "Please sit." The being's expression changed. The wariness in his eyes softened and something that looked like gratitude replaced it. He nodded once and carefully made his way to the seat. When he sat down, Maina could see the relief on his face. "Thank you," he said in perfect English, though. His voice had an unusual tone to it, like he was speaking from deeper in his throat than humans did. Mina smiled and nodded. She moved to where he had been standing and held onto the same pole he had been using. The metal was warm from his grip, and she noticed it had a slight vibration to it that she had never felt before for the rest of the ride. Mina found herself stealing glances at the being. Now that he was sitting down and not in pain, she could see more details about him. His hands were larger than human hands, with longer fingers that ended in what looked rather like claws, though they were neat and well-maintained. There were small devices attached to his clothing that looked like nothing she had ever seen before. They seemed to glow faintly with their own light. Most interesting of all was the way he observed everything around him. His golden eyes moved, constantly taking in every detail of the subway car and its passengers. He watched how people interacted with each other, how they used their phones, how they behaved in the crowded space. It was like he was studying them. When Mina's stop approached, she moved toward the doors. As she passed the being's seat, he looked up at her again. "Thank you," he repeated, and this time there was something more in his voice. It sounded like he was saying more than just "thank you for the seat." "You're welcome," Mina replied. The doors opened, and she stepped out onto the platform. As the train pulled away, she could see the tall figure through the window, still watching her until the car disappeared into the tunnel, walking up the stairs to street level. Mina wondered if she had imagined the whole thing. Had she really just given her seat to some kind of alien being? It seemed impossible, but she could still remember the feeling of his warm grip on the metal pole and the grateful look in those strange golden eyes. She decided not to tell anyone about it. Who would believe her anyway? 3 days had passed since Mina's strange encounter on the subway, but she couldn't stop thinking about it. She sat at her desk in the office building, staring at her computer screen without really seeing the numbers and reports displayed there. Her mind kept going back to those golden eyes and the way the tall being had said, "Thank you, double quotes, Mina, are you okay?" Her coworker Do-yeon rolled his chair over to her desk. He was a friendly man in his early 30s who always brought extra coffee for everyone in their department. Today he looked concerned as he studied her face. "You've been acting strange since Monday," Do-yeon continued. "Did something happen?" Mina looked up from her computer and forced a smile. "I'm fine, just tired, I think." "You sure? You keep spacing out during meetings? Yesterday you didn't even notice when Mr. Park asked you a direct question." That was true. Mina had been so lost in thought that her supervisor had to repeat himself twice before she responded. It wasn't like her to be so distracted at work. "I just have a lot on my mind," she said. Do-yeon didn't look convinced, but he didn't push the matter. He rolled his chair back to his own desk and returned to his work. Mina tried to focus on her reports, but her thoughts kept wandering. Had she really seen what she thought she saw? The more time passed, the more the memory seemed like a dream. Maybe it had been a very tall person wearing strange makeup or prosthetics. Maybe she had been more tired than she realized and her mind had played tricks on her, but she could still remember the warmth of that metal pole and the weight in the being's voice when he thanked her. Those details felt too real to be imagined. During her lunch break, Mina decided to walk to the nearby park instead of eating at her desk like usual. The fresh air might help clear her head. As she sat on a bench eating her sandwich, she noticed other people around her looking at their phones with worried expressions. A man sitting nearby was talking loudly on his phone. "Did you see the news?" he said. "They're saying there are strange lights in the sky over Tokyo and New York. The government says it's just weather phenomena, but it looks really weird on the videos." Mina pulled out her own phone and opened a news app. The top story was about unusual atmospheric disturbances being reported in major cities around the world. There were blurry photos and videos of strange lights and cloud formations that didn't look natural. One video showed streaks of light moving in perfect geometric patterns across the night sky over London. Another showed what looked like a massive shadow passing in front of the moon over Los Angeles. But when experts examined the footage, they couldn't explain what could have caused such a large shadow. The news reports all said the same thing. Government officials claimed these were natural phenomena caused by solar activity or unusual weather patterns. But many people weren't convinced. The comments section under each article was filled with theories about aliens and government-covered dash-ups. Mina scrolled through the images and felt a strange chill run down her spine. She couldn't explain why, but something about these reports made her think of the subway encounter. The timing seemed too coincidental, hundreds of miles above Earth's surface. In a place where no human technology could detect them, 3 massive ships hung in the darkness of space. Each ship was over a mile long and shaped like nothing humans had ever built. Their surfaces were covered in the same scale-like patterns that had been on the tall being's skin inside the largest ship. Kazak stood in a vast room filled with floating displays and control panels. He was no longer wearing the torn clothes from the subway. Instead, he wore a fitted uniform that seemed to be made of the same material as his skin. Devices were attached to his arms and chest, and thin cables of light connected him to the ships. "Systems, status report," said a voice behind him. Kazak turned to see Commander Yejin approaching. She was of the same species as Kazak, but smaller and with darker scales. Her uniform had more decorations, marking her as a high-ranking officer. "The atmospheric disturbance tests are complete," Kazak reported. "We successfully created the light patterns over 6 major population centers without being detected by their primitive sensors." "Good, and your ground reconnaissance?" Kazak hesitated for a moment. "Complete. I spent 72 hours observing their urban transportation systems and social behaviors. Your assessment?" "The species shows the expected patterns of fear and suspicion toward unknown entities. Most individuals avoided contact or showed signs of aggression when confronted with my presence." Commander Yejin nodded. "As predicted. Their psychological profiles suggest they are not ready for contact. Too primitive, too divided. However," Kazak continued, "there was one anomaly." The commander's golden eyes focused on him with interest. "Explain." "A single individual showed unprecedented behavior. Despite my obvious non-human appearance and size advantage, she approached me voluntarily and offered assistance. She gave up her own comfort for my benefit without any expectation of reward." "Curious. Was this individual part of their military or scientific caste?" "No. Based on her clothing and behavior, she appeared to be a standard worker in their commercial sector. No special training or authority?" Commander Yejin was quiet for a moment, processing this information. "One individual does not represent an entire species, Scout Kazak." "I understand, Commander. But the action was so contrary to all our predictions that I believe it warrants further investigation." On the bridge of another ship, Captain Yuna, of Earth's newly formed Space Defense Initiative, stared at her monitoring screens with growing concern. She was a former Air Force pilot who had been recruited to head the planet's first real space defense program just 2 years earlier. "Jinwoo, are you seeing this?" she called to her chief analyst. Jinwoo looked up from his bank of computers. He was young for such an important position, but his ability to spot patterns in data was unmatched. "The gravitational anomalies? They're not random," Captain Yuna said. "Look at the positioning." Jinwoo pulled up a 3-dimensional map of the solar system. Red dots marked the locations where their sensors had detected unusual gravitational readings over the past week. "They're in a triangular formation," he said slowly, "perfectly equidistant from Earth. How long would it take for natural objects in space to arrange themselves in such a perfect pattern?" Jinwoo ran some quick calculations. "Never. The odds are mathematically impossible." Captain Yuna felt her stomach tighten. "So we're looking at artificial objects. It would seem so. How big would they have to be to create these readings?" Jinwoo was quiet for a long moment as he worked through the numbers. When he looked up, his face was pale. "Each object would have to be at least 1 kilometer in length, possibly larger." Captain Yuna stared at the display showing the 3 red dots arranged in a perfect triangle around Earth. Whatever was out there was huge, artificial, and had positioned itself around their planet with mathematical precision. "Get me a secure line to the Secretary of Defense," she said. "We need to have a very serious conversation." Back in Seoul, Mina finished her sandwich and walked back to the office building. She didn't know that hundreds of miles above her head, beings from another world were discussing her simple act of kindness. She didn't know that her decision to give up her seat might be the most important thing any human had done in centuries. All she knew was that she felt different somehow, like something significant had changed in her life. As she rode the elevator back to her floor, she found herself hoping she would see the strange tall being again someday. She had no idea how soon that wish would come true. It started as a normal Friday morning until the sky changed. Mina was walking to the subway station when she noticed people on the street looking up and pointing. She followed their gaze and saw something that made her stop walking completely. 3 enormous shapes hung in the sky above Seoul. They were so large they blocked out parts of the sun, casting strange shadows across the city. The shapes were dark and seemed to shimmer like heat waves, but they were definitely solid objects. "What is that?" someone shouted. People pulled out their phones and started taking pictures and videos. Car alarms began going off as drivers stopped in the middle of roads to stare upward. In the distance, Mina could hear sirens starting to wail. The shapes became clearer as whatever was hiding them stopped working. 3 massive ships appeared in the sky, each one longer than several city blocks. Their surfaces were covered in patterns that looked familiar to Mina, though she couldn't remember where she had seen them before. Her phone started buzzing with emergency alerts. The same message appeared on every screen. Emergency alert, unidentified aircraft over major cities worldwide. Seek indoor shelter immediately. Await further instructions. All around Seoul, people were getting the same message. Similar alerts were going out in Tokyo, New York, London, and dozens of other cities around the world. Everywhere the messages were the same. Massive ships had appeared in the sky without warning. At the Space Defense Initiative headquarters, Captain Yuna was having the worst day of her career. The command center was filled with people running between computer stations and shouting orders. Red warning lights flashed on every screen. "Status report," she called out to her team. 17 ships total, Jinwoo reported from his station. They appeared simultaneously over major population centers on every continent. Each ship is approximately 1.2 kilometers in length. Any hostile actions? None detected? They're just sitting there? General Taeyun burst through the command center doors. He was a tall man with gray hair and the kind of serious expression that made people nervous. "Captain Yuna, I need a full briefing in 5 minutes. "Yes, sir. What's the military response?" "Every Air Force base in the world is on high alert. We have fighter jets scrambling to intercept, but what, General? They're too high up. Our planes can't reach them." On the main screen, satellite images showed the ships hovering in the upper atmosphere. They were positioned perfectly to be visible from the ground, but too far away for conventional aircraft to reach. "It's like they want us to see them," Jinwoo said quietly. "But they don't want us to touch them," Captain Yuna added. Suddenly, every screen in the command center went black. Then slowly an image appeared. It showed a figure that made several people in the room gasp. The being on the screen was clearly not human. It was tall with scaled skin and large golden eyes. It wore what looked like an official uniform covered in symbols that no human had ever seen. "People of Earth," the being said in perfect English, though its voice had that same unusual deep tone Mena remembered from the subway. "I am Commander Eugene of the Interstellar Coalition. We come in peace." General Taeyun stepped closer to the screen. "How are they broadcasting this?" "Every communication system on the planet," Jinwoo said, checking his readings. "Television, radio, internet, even emergency broadcasts. They've taken control of everything." The alien commander continued speaking. "We have been observing your world for many years. We represent a coalition of peaceful species who work together across the galaxy. We are here to determine if your species is ready to join us." The image changed to show peaceful scenes, different alien species working together, building cities, exploring space. It looked like something from a science fiction movie, but the technology displaying it was clearly real. However, Commander Eugene said, we have concerns about your species' readiness for contact. Your history shows patterns of violence and fear toward those who are different. We must be certain you can overcome these patterns. General Taeyeon turned to Captain Yuna. This is a threat assessment. They're deciding whether to invade. To prove your species' potential for growth, the commander continued, we ask you to locate one specific individual. 7 days ago, one of our scouts had direct contact with a human in your city of Seoul. This human showed remarkable kindness to our scout, despite his clearly non-human appearance. Mena was sitting in her office break room watching the broadcast on the television with her co-workers. When the alien mentioned soul and kindness to a non-human, she felt her heart start beating faster. The human gave up their own comfort to help our injured scout, Commander Eugene said. This action was so unexpected that we must learn more about this individual. If your species can produce such individuals regularly, there may be hope for peaceful contact. Doyeon looked over at Mina. That's weird. Didn't you say something happened to you on the subway this week? Mina's mouth felt dry. I don't. Remember, you have 48 hours to locate this human, the commander announced. If you can find them and bring them forward willingly, we will begin peaceful diplomatic contact. If you cannot, we will proceed with standard first contact protocols. What are standard protocols? General Taeyeon asked the room, but nobody had an answer. The alien's image changed to show a clearer view of the scout Mina had met. There was no doubt now, it was definitely the same being from the subway. The image showed him in his torn clothes, looking exactly as he had when she gave him her seat. This is our scout, Kazak, Commander Eugene said. The human who helped him may not realize the importance of their action. We encourage all humans to search their memories and come forward if they recognize this individual. Dr. Sahi sat in her laboratory at Seoul National University, surrounded by books about alien life and communication theory. She had spent her entire career studying the possibility of extraterrestrial contact, but she had never imagined it would happen like this. Her phone was ringing constantly. Government officials, military leaders, and news reporters all wanted to talk to her. As one of the world's leading experts on xenobiology, she was suddenly the most important person nobody had heard of. Dr. Sahi, her assistant called from the doorway. The Ministry of Defense wants you in Seoul immediately. They're putting together a first contact team. First contact team? Dr. Sahi looked up from her notes. We don't have protocols for this. Nobody does. They want you to write them in the next 6 hours. Dr. Sahi stared at the television screen showing the alien commander. Everything she had studied suggested that first contact would be a slow, careful process with lots of preparation time. Instead, they had less than 2 days to find one person in a city of nearly 10 million people. The human we seek showed compassion across species boundaries, Commander Eugene said in her final statement. They helped someone who looked completely different from themselves with no expectation of reward. This is the quality we value most in potential coalition members. The broadcast ended and normal television programming resumed. But nothing felt normal anymore. Around the world, emergency meetings were being called. Every government was scrambling to find the mysterious human who had helped an alien on a subway train. News reporters were already calling it the most important person search in human history. In Seoul, police were pulling security footage from every subway station. Thousands of people were calling hotlines claiming to be the person who helped the alien. Social media was filled with theories and fake stories, but Mina just sat in the break room, staring at the blank television screen. She was the person they were looking for. The fate of human contact with alien life might depend on her stepping forward. The question was, did she have the courage to do it? Outside, the 3 massive ships continued to hover silently in the sky, waiting for an answer that only she could give. The entire city of Seoul had turned into one giant search operation. Police cars drove through every neighborhood with loudspeakers asking people to check their memories from the past week. News reporters stood on street corners interviewing Anyone who rode the subway regularly, Detective Hyunwoo had been put in charge of the investigation. He was a patient man who had solved many difficult cases, but this was unlike anything he had ever handled. His team was working around the clock, going through security footage from hundreds of subway stations. "We have the time frame," Detective Hyunwoo told his officers during their morning briefing. 7 days ago, between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m., looking for any interaction between a normal person and someone who looks very unusual. The problem was that Seoul's subway system had thousands of cameras, and they all recorded over their footage every 2 weeks. Some of the older stations had already deleted the footage from 7 days ago. "We're running out of time," Officer Min-jae said. "Half the stations have already recycled their recordings." "Then we focus on the stations that still have footage," Detective Hyunwoo replied. "Start with the busiest lines during rush hour." At the same time, Detective Hyunwoo's team was dealing with hundreds of people calling the police hotline. Everyone claimed to be the person who helped the alien, but most of their stories didn't match the details from the broadcast. "I helped a tall green man on Tuesday," one caller said. "The alien said it was 7 days ago, not Tuesday," the officer replied. "Well, maybe I'm remembering wrong. It could have been 7 days ago. Can you describe exactly what happened?" "He was sitting down and I gave him my seat." "No, wait, I was sitting down and he gave me a seat? Or maybe we were both standing?" Most of the calls were like this. People wanted to be important, wanted to be the person who could save humanity, but they clearly hadn't actually met the alien scout, Professor. Sun-ho was called to the government building to help explain what the aliens might be thinking. He was an expert in international law and had written several books about how different cultures might interact. "The aliens said they would use standard first contact protocols if we can't find this person," General Tae-yun said. "What does that mean?" Professor Sun-ho looked uncomfortable. "In most theoretical models, standard first contact means military-to-military communication only. No civilian involvement, no cultural exchange, just government negotiations. Is that bad? It depends on what they want. If they see us as equals, military contact could work. But if they see us as less advanced?" Professor Sun-ho paused. "Military first contact often ends with the less advanced species becoming subjects rather than partners." General Tae-yun frowned. "So finding this subway person isn't just about being friendly, it's about staying free. Possibly. The aliens seem to value individual kindness over institutional power. That suggests they judge species by how ordinary people behave, not by how governments behave." Meanwhile, Maino was having the worst day of her life. She had barely slept since the broadcast, and she couldn't concentrate on anything. Every time she looked at her phone, there were more news stories about the search for the subway hero. Do-yun kept looking at her strangely during work meetings. He clearly suspected something, but he hadn't said anything directly. During lunch, Do-yun finally confronted her. "Mina, we need to talk," he said, sitting down next to her in the cafeteria. "About what? You know about what?" "The subway thing. You've been acting weird all week. And now there's this whole alien situation about someone helping their scout on a subway. Mina tried to act normal. I don't know what you mean. Come on. I've known you for 3 years. You're the person who always gives up your seat for elderly people or pregnant women. If there was a hurt alien on your train, of course you would help them. That doesn't mean it was me." Do-yun leaned closer. "Mina, if it was you, you need to come forward. This isn't just about you anymore. This is about everyone on Earth. What if they're lying?" Mina said quietly. "What if this is all a trick and they actually want to hurt us?" "Then we're probably doomed anyway," Do-yun replied. "But what if they're telling the truth? What if you're the reason humanity gets to join some kind of space alliance? What if I'm the reason they decide we're not good enough, based on you being kind to someone who needed help?" "Mina, that makes no sense." That afternoon, Mina made a decision. She called in sick to work and went home to her small apartment. She needed time to think without Do-yun asking questions or seeing news reports about the search, but even at home, she couldn't escape it. Her neighbors were talking about it in the hallway. The television showed nothing but news about the alien ships. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from friends asking if she had seen anyone unusual lately. The worst part was watching the news. Interviews with experts who explained how important this was. Dr. Sahi appeared on several channels, talking about how this moment could determine humanity's future for centuries. "The aliens are testing us," Dr. Sahi said during one interview. "They want to know if humans can show kindness to beings who are completely different from us. This isn't about technology or military strength, it's about character." "But what if we can't find this person?" the news reporter asked. "Then we'll have to hope that their standard protocols are more generous than most of our theoretical models suggest." That evening, Detective Hyun-woo finally found what he was looking for. His team had been working through footage from Line 2, one of Seoul's busiest subway routes. In a recording from exactly 7 days ago, they found clear images of a very tall, unusual-looking figure boarding a train. "There," Officer Min-jae pointed at the screen. 6:52 p.m., Car 4. The footage showed the alien scout looking exactly like he had in the broadcast. He was wearing torn clothes and clearly injured. Other passengers moved away from him or stared. "Keep watching," Detective Hyun-woo said. 3 minutes later, a young woman appeared in the frame. She was ordinary-looking, wearing office clothes and carrying a small purse. The camera caught her walking up to the alien and clearly offering him her seat. "Can we get a better view of her face?" Officer Min-jae zoomed in on the image. The resolution wasn't perfect, but they could see her features clearly enough. "Run this through facial recognition," Detective Hyun-woo ordered. "Check it against ID databases, employment records, everything." "What if she doesn't want to be found?" Officer Min-jae asked. "Then we hope she changes her mind before tomorrow evening," Detective Hyun-woo replied. "Because if we can't convince her to come forward, those aliens are going to assume we don't care about the kind of behavior they value." The facial recognition search would take several hours to run through all the databases. Detective Hyun-woo hoped they would have an answer by morning. Above Seoul, the alien ships continued their silent wait. Inside the largest ship, Kazak stood before Commander Yejin, reporting on the human search efforts. "They are looking very hard," Kazak said. "Their primitive technology is slow, but they are being thorough." "Do you think they will find her?" "I believe so. But I do not know if she will agree to come forward. Humans seem to fear attention and responsibility." Commander Yejin considered this. Perhaps that fear is exactly why her original action was so remarkable. She helped without thinking about consequences or rewards. What if she refuses to meet with us? Then we will know that her kindness was an isolated incident, not a sign of species-wide potential. Neither of them knew that at that moment Mina was sitting in her apartment, staring at her phone and trying to decide whether to call the police hotline. The number was right there on her screen. One phone call would end the search and begin whatever came next, but she still couldn't bring herself to dial it. Mina woke up to someone knocking loudly on her apartment door. She looked at her clock to 7:30 a.m. The knocking continued, urgent and persistent. "Miss Mina?" a voice called from outside. "This is Detective Hyun-woo with Seoul Metropolitan Police. We need to speak with you." Mina's heart started racing. She had spent all night thinking about calling the police hotline, but she had never worked up the courage to do it. Now they had found her anyway. She opened the door to see 2 police officers standing in her hallway. Detective Hyun-woo was a middle-aged man with kind eyes. The other officer, a woman, held a tablet showing subway security footage. "Miss Mina, we believe you are the person who helped an injured passenger on Line 2 last Monday evening. Is that correct?" Mina looked at the tablet screen. There she was, clear as day, walking up to the tall alien and offering her seat. There was no point in denying it anymore. "Yes," she said quietly. "That was me," Detective Hyun-woo smiled with relief. "Miss, you may have just saved the world." Within an hour, Mina found herself in the back of a government car, driving toward a building she had never seen before. Detective Hyun-woo sat next to her, explaining what would happen next. "You'll meet with our first contact team," he said. "They'll prepare you for speaking with the aliens. But first, you need to know something important." "What?" The whole world is watching this. Every country, every government, every person on Earth is waiting to see what happens when you talk to them. Mina felt sick to her stomach. I just gave someone my seat. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. That's exactly why it matters, Detective Yanwu said. You didn't help him because you knew he was an alien scout. You helped him because it was the right thing to do. The government building was unlike anything Mina had ever seen. Security guards with serious faces checked her identity 3 times before letting her inside. The hallways were filled with people in expensive suits speaking in urgent whispers. Ambassador Minji met her at the elevator. She was an elegant woman in her 50s who had spent her career in international diplomacy. Miss Mina, thank you for coming forward, Ambassador Minji said as they rode to the top floor. I know this must be overwhelming. I don't understand why this is so important, Mina said. I just gave someone a seat on the subway. That simple action may determine whether humanity joins an interstellar community or remains isolated on Earth, Ambassador Minji explained. The aliens are testing our character as a species. They arrived at a large conference room filled with monitors and communication equipment. Dr. Sahi was there, along with several other experts Mina didn't recognize. Everyone turned to look at her when she entered. This is her? Dr. Sahi asked. Yes. Detective Hyunwoo confirmed. Facial recognition was a perfect match. Dr. Sahi walked over to Mina. I'm Dr. Sahi. I study alien life and communication. I need to prepare you for what's about to happen. Which is what, exactly? You're going to have a conversation that could change the course of human history. Dr. Sahi led Mina to a chair facing the largest monitor in the room. The aliens have agreed to meet with you via video communication first. If that goes well, they may invite you aboard their ship. Aboard their ship? Mina's voice cracked. It's completely voluntary, Ambassador Minji said quickly. You don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with. But if I don't, what happens to everyone else? Dr. Sahi and Ambassador Minji exchanged glances. We don't know, Dr. Sahi admitted. Their standard first contact protocols are classified information we don't have access to. At exactly 2 p.m., the monitor flickered to life. Commander Yejin appeared on the screen, but this time she wasn't alone. Standing next to her was the alien scout Mina had met on the subway. Hello, Commander Yejin said. I am Commander Yejin, and this is Scout Kazak, you have already met. Mina looked at Kazak. He appeared much healthier than he had on the subway. His clothes were no longer torn, and he stood straight instead of favoring his injured side. Hello, Mina said, not sure what else to say. We have been very interested to meet you again, Kazak said. His voice was exactly as she remembered it. Your action on your transportation system was ... unexpected. I just thought you looked like you needed help. That is precisely why it was remarkable, Commander Yejin interjected. Scout Kazak's appearance was clearly non-human. Most of your species showed fear or avoidance behaviors when encountering him. He was hurt, Mina said simply. It didn't matter what he looked like. The two aliens looked at each other, communicating in a way that didn't require words. We have been observing your species for 47 of your years, Commander Yejin explained. We represent the Interstellar Coalition, an alliance of 63 species who work together for mutual benefit and protection. Protection from what? Dr. Sahi asked from off-camera. Not all species in the galaxy are peaceful, Kazak answered. The coalition exists to help developing civilizations avoid conquest by hostile forces. But we only invite species who demonstrate the capacity for cooperation across biological and cultural differences, Commander Yejin continued. Your species has a history of violence toward those who are different. This concerned us. Mina was beginning to understand. So you sent him to test us? Not exactly, Kazak said. I was conducting standard reconnaissance. But when I was injured in an accident, it became an unplanned test of how your species responds to vulnerable outsiders. Most humans avoided me, or showed aggression, Kazak continued. But you offered assistance without hesitation. This suggested that your species might have the potential we look for. But one person isn't enough to judge an entire planet, Commander Eugene said. We needed to see how your society would respond when faced with the choice to find and support that individual. Ambassador Minji leaned forward. You mean the search itself was part of the test? Yes, we wanted to see if your leaders would value the kind of behavior Scout Kazakh experienced, or if they would dismiss it as unimportant. And what did you conclude? Dr. Sahi asked. Commander Eugene was quiet for a moment. Your entire planet mobilized to find one person whose only notable action was showing kindness to a stranger. Your governments, your police, your citizens all worked together because they understood that compassion across species boundaries was valuable. This suggests that Miss Mina's behavior was not an isolated incident, Kazakh added. It indicates that your species has the potential to extend empathy beyond your own kind. Mina felt overwhelmed by the implications of what they were saying. So what happens now? Now we make an offer, Commander Eugene said. The Coalition would like to invite humanity to begin the integration process. Integration process? Ambassador Minji asked. A gradual introduction to galactic society. It typically takes 50 to 100 years for a species to fully adapt. We provide technology, knowledge, and protection during the transition. And if we refuse, then you continue as you are, Kazakh said. We will not interfere with your development. But we also cannot protect you from other forces in the galaxy who may not have peaceful intentions. The room was silent as everyone processed this information. There's one condition, Commander Eugene said finally. The individual who demonstrated the behavior we value most must serve as humanity's first civilian ambassador. Miss Mina, we would like you to spend time with our fleet, learning about the Coalition and helping us understand your species better. Everyone in the room turned to look at Mina. The weight of their stares felt enormous. I'm not qualified for something like that, she said. I'm just an office worker. That is exactly why you are qualified, Kazakh replied. You represent the best of what ordinary humans can be. That is more valuable than any special training or authority. Mina looked around the room at all the experts and officials who had devoted their lives to preparing for moments like this. Now they were all waiting for her decision. If I say yes, what exactly would I have to do? Spend time aboard our ships, Commander Eugene explained. Learn about Coalition species and protocols. Help us understand human culture and values. Serve as a bridge between our civilizations. For how long? Initially, one of your months. If both sides are satisfied with the arrangement, we can discuss longer terms, Dr. Sahi spoke up. Miss Mina, you don't have to decide right now. This is an enormous responsibility. But Mina was thinking about something else. She was thinking about the subway ride and how scared and alone Kazakh had looked. She was thinking about how simple it had been to offer help to someone who needed it. If I don't do this, humanity doesn't get to join your coalition? Your species will have other opportunities, Commander Eugene said. But this is the path available. Now, Mina took a deep breath. A week ago, the most important decision she had to make was what to have for lunch. Now, she was being asked to represent all of humanity to an alien alliance, but when she really thought about it, the choice was the same as it had been on the subway. Someone needed help, and she was in a position to provide it? I'll do it, she said. 6 months later, Mina stood on the observation deck of the Coalition flagship, looking down at Earth through the massive transparent wall. The planet looked so peaceful from space, blue and white and beautiful. It was hard to believe that just half a year ago, most humans didn't even know there was life beyond their world. The morning briefing is starting soon, Kazakh said, walking up beside her. Over the months, they have become good friends. He was much more relaxed now than he had been during those first formal meetings. I still can't believe this is my life now, Mina said. You have adapted remarkably well, Kazakh replied. Much better than most species do during their first integration period. The briefing room was filled with beings from a dozen different worlds. Mina had learned to recognize most of the Coalition species by now. There were the tall, scaled people like Kazakh, Small beings covered in fur who communicated partly through scent, crystalline entities that looked like living gemstones, and many others. Commander Yejin called the meeting to order. Status report. On Earth integration? Dr. Bogum, who had been assigned as Mina's human counterpart, stood up. He was a linguistics expert who had been working to establish translation protocols between human languages and Coalition standard communication. The language barriers are resolving faster than expected, Dr. Bogum reported. Humans have a remarkable capacity for learning new communication methods. Cultural adaptation? Commander Yejin asked. Specialist Neian, a young woman who had been chosen to help coordinate the integration process, answered this question. Better than projected. The initial shock of first contact has settled into curiosity and excitement. Opinion polls show 73% of humans are optimistic about coalition membership. Any significant resistance movements? Some, but smaller than we feared. Most opposition comes from fear of change rather than actual hostility toward alien contact. Mena had been asked to provide the human perspective on integration challenges. She stood up to give her report. The biggest challenge is still the same as it was 6 months ago, she said. Humans are used to being alone in the universe. Some people are having trouble accepting that we're actually one of the younger species in the galaxy. Elaborate, Commander Yojin requested. We've always thought of ourselves as the most advanced life forms. Learning that we're more like children compared to coalition species is hard for some people to accept. How do you suggest addressing this? Time and patience, Mena said, and more direct contact. Every human who actually meets coalition members in person becomes more comfortable with the idea. This was true. The first group of human visitors to the coalition ships had been terrified. But after spending time with beings like Kazakh, they realized that despite the physical differences, everyone shared similar values about cooperation and kindness. After the briefing, Mena walked through the ship's corridors toward her living quarters. The coalition ship was enormous, more like a floating city than anything humans had built. It contained everything needed to support dozens of different species for years at a time. In the transportation hub, she passed a group of human children who were visiting the ship with their parents. They were laughing and playing with young beings from other species, completely comfortable with creatures that would have terrified most adults just months ago. Ambassador Mina, one of the children called out. She had gotten used to the title, though it still felt strange. Hello, Jiwoo, she replied to the 8-year-old boy who had become one of her regular visitors. Will you show us the gravity room? Again, he asked. Maybe later. Right now, you should stay with the group tour. The children ran off, chattering excitedly about all the things they were seeing. Their easy acceptance gave Mina hope for humanity's future in the coalition. That evening, Mina returned to Earth for her weekly visit home. The coalition had provided a small shuttle for her personal use, something that still amazed her every time she used it. Seoul looked different now. There were coalition observation posts set up throughout the city, and it was common to see alien beings walking alongside humans on busy streets. The subway system had been expanded to accommodate larger passengers, and multilingual signs now included coalition standard symbols. Mina's old subway stop looked almost the same, except for the small plaque that had been installed near the platform entrance. It read, "On this transit line, a simple act of kindness changed the course of human history." She took the same train she had ridden for years before becoming an ambassador. The car was about half full of humans and half coalition beings. A crystalline entity offered its seat to an elderly human woman. 2 human teenagers were chatting with a furry alien about music preferences. At her old stop, Mina got off and walked to the coffee shop where she was meeting Do-Yun. He had been promoted to department manager after the company she worked for received several coalition technology contracts. How's space life treating you? Do-Yun asked when she sat down. It's getting easier. The coalition species are much more similar to humans than you'd expect. They argue about sports, worry about their children, and complain about their jobs. Just like we do? Any regrets about accepting the ambassador position? Mina thought about this question. 6 months ago, her biggest concern had been finishing her work reports on time. Now she was helping to navigate humanity's entry into a galactic civilization. No regrets, she said. But sometimes I miss the simplicity. Well, you can't go back to being unknown now. There are statues of you in 12 countries. This was unfortunately true. Mena had become a global celebrity, which was the part of her new life she liked least. But Dr. Sahi had explained that human society needed symbols and heroes to help process major changes. How are things going with the integration centers? Mena asked. Better than expected. The coalition education programs are really popular. We have waiting lists for language classes and cultural exchange programs. The integration centers were buildings where humans could go to learn about coalition species and prepare for broader contact. Similar centers on coalition worlds were teaching aliens about human culture. Any major problems? Some people are still worried about losing human independence. But most of those concerns fade once they actually interact with coalition members. This had been Mena's experience as well. The coalition's approach was very different from what many humans had expected. Instead of imposing changes, they offered opportunities and let each species choose their own pace of integration. After coffee with Doyun, Mina walked through the city center. Construction crews were working on new buildings designed to accommodate multiple species. Parks had been redesigned with different atmospheric zones. Public transportation was being upgraded to handle beings of various sizes and physical needs, but the most remarkable changes were in how humans behaved toward each other. The successful first contact had made many people reconsider their attitudes toward anyone who seemed different. Crime rates had dropped, charitable donations had increased, and social conflicts were being resolved more peacefully. It's like the whole world decided to be kinder, President Yunbi had said during a recent speech. That evening, Mina returned to the coalition ship for dinner with her alien colleagues. The meal included foods from 6 different worlds, though coalition food preparation had adapted to human dietary needs. We received the final evaluation report from Coalition Central, Commander Yejin announced during dinner. Humanity's integration progress has exceeded all projected timelines. What does that mean? Mina asked. It means Earth will be offered full coalition membership in 2 years instead of the usual 5 to 10 years. The table erupted in congratulations from beings of all species. Mina felt a mixture of pride and amazement. There is one more announcement, Commander Yejin said. The Coalition Council has voted to establish a new first contact protocol based on the success of the Earth integration. What kind of protocol? Dr. Bogum asked. Instead of formal government-to-government contact, future first contact situations will begin by identifying individuals who demonstrate cross-species empathy. We will call it the Mena Protocol. Mena nearly choked on her food. The what? Your approach of helping someone different from yourself without expecting anything in return has proven to be the most reliable indicator of a species' readiness for peaceful contact. Kazak explained. So, when we encounter new civilizations, we will look for individuals like you, Commander Yejin added. People who show kindness to strangers who don't look like them. Later that night, Mina stood again on the observation deck. Looking down at Earth, the planet was covered in lights now, including many new ones that came from coalition settlements and integration centers. Kazak joined her at the viewing wall. Do you ever regret getting injured that day? Mina asked him. Never, Kazak replied. Though I must admit, when I first saw you approaching me on that train, I thought you might be planning to attack me. What changed your mind? The expression on your face. You looked concerned, not angry. And you moved slowly, carefully, like you didn't want to frighten me. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching Earth turn slowly beneath them. Kazak, can I ask you something? Of course. How many other species failed the test? How many worlds are still alone because they couldn't pass your empathy evaluation? Kazak was quiet for a long moment. More than I like to think about, he said finally. But fewer since we started using your approach. The Mena protocol has already been successful with 2 other species. So other worlds are getting the same chance we got? Yes, because you prove that individual kindness can represent the best of an entire civilization. Mina smiled, thinking about the chain of events that had brought her here. A week ago, no, 6 months ago, she had just been a tired office worker who gave up her seat to someone who looked like he needed it more than she did. Now she was an ambassador to the stars, representing humanity in a community of worlds she could never have imagined. And it had all started with the simplest possible action, being kind to a stranger. I should get some sleep, Mina said. Tomorrow. We're meeting with the Arcturus delegation about the new trade agreements. Good night, Ambassador, Kazak said. As Mina walked back to her quarters, she passed the ship's main transport area. A group of human visitors was preparing to return to Earth after their first week-long cultural exchange. They looked excited and happy, chattering about everything they had learned. Among them was Jiwoo, the 8-year-old boy who always asked so many questions. Ambassador Mina, he called out, guess what I learned today? What did you learn, Jiwoo? That being kind to people who are different from you is the most important thing in the whole universe, Mina smiled. That's right. And do you know? Why? Because kindness is how we make friends with everyone, even if they look scary at first? Exactly. As the transport departed for Earth, Mina realized that the future was in good hands. Children like Jiwoo would grow up in a universe where differences were celebrated rather than feared, where kindness was recognized as humanity's greatest strength. The subway ride that had changed everything was now just one part of a much larger story, and the best part was that the story was just beginning.